morning. Welcome to Task Talk, Real Talk, Real Change. My name is Linda Oristano, and I'm with the newly named AWARE Drug and Alcohol Community Coalition, formerly the Northport East Northport Community Drug and Alcohol Task Force. The reason for the name change is I'm happy to say that we have expanded into different areas to offer the resources, the prevention and education that we feel that we do so well here in our regional area. So you'll hear more and more about us in the next couple of months. And today, I'm really happy to have with me Ellen Ritz, who is a registered nurse and also the president for Health Education for NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness. Hi, Ellen. How are you?
Good. Thank you very much.
Good. It's nice to have you here today.
So
I'm so happy that you decided to join us and do this with us. So for listeners who may not know, can you tell us about NAMI and the work you do locally?
Yes. Okay. So NAMI is a national organization. It's the largest grassroots mental health organization in the country. And they oversee developing our evidence-based programs that we offer to the people in our communities. Our affiliate is what's called as a chapter affiliate is NAMI Central Suffolk Long Island. I'm the president of NAMI. We call CSLI NY. I'm also vice president of New York State Board. But our passion for the affiliates is really getting programs out. It is our mission for all of NAMI is to support, to educate, and to advocate. My core belief is that connection, and that's one of the hardest things that people feel, the lack of connection when they're struggling with a mental health condition or they're a family member.
Right.
And because of stigma, which has really been, it's a character flaw, it's something else. Our mission really is to say and it is a biological illness. Mm-hmm. It is a brain biological imbalance, and therefore medication can help. It's not only medication, and sometimes not medication at all, but therapy is a partner.
Right.
But connection, not feeling alone, helps so many people feel that they are not alone,
right,
and that they are worth it, that somebody else actually understands. Mm-hmm. But it's also offering education and support. And education means that you have choices, whether you make those choices or not, but at least the awareness is the first step in deciding how I want to move forward. What do I want to do? And so many of us say our feelings are not right. There's no such thing as not right feelings. Feelings are yours. No one can tell you they're wrong.
Right.
And when we put down feelings, what happens? They get bigger, they get problems. As we recognize feelings and understanding they're ours, and we can move through them.
Right. Mm-hmm. I was always told that feelings aren't facts, but they're messages. And they're messages that something else is going on with us and that we could really work through that to figure out, what's happening. But why do you think September is such an important month for raising awareness, with both Recovery Month and Suicide Prevention Month being recognized? Why do they focus on that?
Well, it's interesting because I think every month has a focus, right? And I don't think there's one month that it should be focused on recovery and suicide. I think it's all year round.
Right.
But to keep the focus on a particular time to talk about it. It's just like we have Mental Health Month, and that's when we do a lot of faith groups, that when a faith leader can now talk about mental health and talk about in their sermons or have health fairs. So having a particular month helps focus on suicide, recovery, or breast cancer, whatever it is in that month.
It really brings attention to it.
It brings attention.
Even though it's something that we deal with every single day.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's a lifetime. It's not just every day.
Right.
These are a lifetime, particularly recovery. And we do talk about suicide quite a bit because that's part of having an underlying mental health condition and feeling hopeless and helpless.
Right. Right. What does recovery mean when we're talking about mental health and substance misuse?
So that's the whole big discussion. And substance misuse, and I love that you use misuse. There's no abuse. It's use and misuse. It is actually self-medication, they call it. It is when you have a mental health condition, which could be anxiety, depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, OCD. I can name a ton of them. There's many, many, many. When you have those difficult feelings of something stopping you from moving forward, the first two symptoms of a mental health condition is the inability to focus. And the second one is withdrawal from being social or isolation. And those change in behaviors usually come in the late teens to 20s. And that's where that frontal, it's not an accident. The frontal lobe is developing, and they let out at that stage of development frequently the depression, the bipolar, whatever it may be.
Right.
And so what do people do? And they usually been struggling long before that, but there's no names, and the brain isn't developed to put names or what's really going on. So I'm a sub-school nurse at this point. And so when students really having trouble focusing in school, it really has something going on underneath. There's no such thing as a bad student or a bad kid.
No.
And they are usually very intelligent, but the emotional and distraction of the mental health condition doesn't allow them to really focus in school well.
So that's where the co-occurring comes in too, right?
So co-occurring, then what happens is, and unfortunately some of the problems of this world now is that they think marijuana is okay. So people self-medicate, and as we call it, the proper term,
Right.
with marijuana or pot or unfortunately with some harder drugs or alcohol. They're all no good. And people don't understand that although pot and marijuana are legal, it will decrease your lifespan.
Yes.
It hurts your capillaries and arteries. But more than that, it decreases your IQ. It actually increases your anxiety. I know people take it because it makes me less anxious for the moment. But in between, when they're not smoking, their anxiety will go up 3, 4, 5 times more than it would normally.
Right.
And not only that, but there's some GI problems. There are many.
Yes, I was reading about all the GI problems it can cause. And, like you said, people think that it's a self-medication. I know people that do it all the time because it takes away their pain. But I don't agree with that. But, everybody's different.
Well, look, marijuana started as a nurse. I used to be an emergency room nurse, head of the trauma unit at Bellevue, was head of an intensive care, and ran clinics and taught diabetes at Mount Sinai. And I'm going to tell you that during cancer, they used to give marijuana because it increased the appetite. That's a very different use than anxiety, depression, trying to self-medicate because the pain of not being able to do what you need to do, it sort of quiets that for temporarily, not real.
Well, that was like fentanyl, right? They do the same thing with patches, in the hospitals, for pain.
Oh, right. And then it's the misuse, right?
Right.
That's where I love
exactly.
the misuse.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Can you share a story or an example that shows what recovery can look like in everyday life?
So it's a bumpy road, first of all. And I should have brought my poem that I read last night to the class, and it's called A Hole in the Sidewalk. But recovery is incremental changes.
Right.
The first part that leads to recovery, which is a very difficult place to get to, is acceptance. Acceptance, I have an illness, a biological illness, and I need to stay in the present and work on it.
Right.
And part of the journey, and I always use Kubler-Ross, is shock and disbelief. 75% of mental health conditions are there by the age of 24.
Wow.
That's why we are doing a lot of school programs now, elementary school. We're just a brand new initiative this year, and high school, because we really need students to recognize some of the symptoms, some of the things that are going on. And as importantly, is families. We focus on families because families are the most important people in this world to help support, not fix and not control anybody who's struggling, but how to support them,
right?
How to help them move forward. And those are the keys. And I know professionals are wonderful. The family's attitude will either slow up or move forward. And I do want to answer your question.
Well, that's all right. That's all right, because I'll just share with you that I'm a woman in long-term recovery. So, and I remember when I was first thinking about, or I didn't think about getting sober, I had somebody bring it to my attention. So I was in denial totally. I didn't even know that I had an issue. Although on some level you always know. But when I went to my first meeting, it was like the strangest thing, and what you just said earlier is like you have to admit that you're powerless over people, places, and things, or whatever substance it is that you're trying to, get rid of. And it was so hard for me because I didn't want to be like everybody else in that room. It's like here I am in a church basement, and it's like, that's not where I belong, which was definitely my ego and stuff that was going on in my life, and fear. Fear was a big factor. I was afraid. I was afraid to change. I was afraid to admit what's going to happen, and then the journey started. The journey was like every day when you wake up, you felt different. It was, and trying to stay away and keep those substances down, that was really hard. So having a support system was like key for me. People that checked in on me, people that said, come hang out with us, changing what I used to do, letting go of people that I couldn't have in my life anymore. That was some of the things that I had to do right from the beginning. But, I'm sure your experience is different.
Kudos to you. I mean, it's a very tough thing. And I'm going to tell you, I do want to talk about recovery is not just in substances.
Right.
Recovery is also, I had a young girl who was with us in our support group for a long time, and she had been in the hospital 1 year, 4 times for suicide. Mm-hmm. So she ended up going into a little bit longer term, 8 months. And by the time and she was ready, there's a readiness factor, and that she became an EMT and now a social worker. So it takes time, years,
right?
Not months,
no,
years.
It does take years,
and unfortunately, it's a common journey that people don't realize. That I'm 3P woman. The first is perseverance. Most people and families have that. Patience, most people don't have it, or families. And as you have more patience, people will be stronger in their journey,
right,
and in their foundation of recovery. And the last is, how do we change behavior?
Right.
We change behavior by noticing positives or strengths, little ones. You don't have to know, and don't make a party. Just say, that's really nice that you were able to put, withstand these really difficult withdrawal feelings.
Right.
And that's what you do. And understanding that pain and sad and difficult feelings are part of life.
Right.
And when I do into schools, I have a questionnaire, a mental health questionnaire. It's fascinating. When I have one of the questions, it's multiple choice, and it says, what is good mental health? Do you know what students and people don't check? The ability to feel sad. And do you know what I blame that for, among many things? Social media.
Right.
Because that's life.
Right.
There's ups and downs. It's never straight. And that teaches us strengths. When we get through these tough times, you are stronger.
Right.
If everything was always okay, you wouldn't be as strong.
Well, it's funny you say that, because when I was growing up, it was like I wasn't allowed to cry. I wasn't allowed to show my feelings. That was being weak. I had to stay strong. I could do this. I could do this. But in the meantime, I had like this hole in the pit of my stomach that I was trying to go into and just hide, because it was very painful. But I couldn't tell anybody that. And that was, and today it's so different because you can talk about that stuff today. And you have the 3 Ps, but I also like physical, mental, and spiritual. That's really what recovery is to me. It's all 3 wrapped together, and if I take care of all 3 of them, then I think I'm on the right road sometimes.
And learning coping.
Right.
Learning when something comes. Everybody has stress. Everybody has problems. It's how you handle them that make the difference. But may have been families in the past. Now it's social media. Everybody's having a good time. And what I say to people, that is not true. Nobody's having a good time all the time. Matter of fact, the day is about getting through, accomplishing what you can, and enjoying parts and moments or whatever that is.
Right.
That is the real life. But people feel, well, how come everybody's having a good time but me? And then they feel, the feeling really left out and bad. And sometimes that's when they self-medicate,
right,
or turn to addictions, eating disorders, gambling, whatever. They're all part of misuse of coping skills.
Right, right. And I'm glad that you mentioned the gambling piece of it, because we've been chatting about that, and even the screen time with the kids. We've been talking a lot about that and what that does to them with their mental health. So that's a big one too.
Everybody has had a situation in the family, and NAMI people have a lived experience,
right?
Which means that either we have struggled or we have somebody in our family who has struggled with a mental health condition. And that gives us the patience, the empathy, and understanding the complexity,
right,
of these things, so that we can help, with our structured programs, we can help people have choices and move forward, and how to help the person, because when a child comes home, no matter how old, it could be a young adult that lives at home as well, or anybody else. But when they come home and the parents are either yelling or anxious, parents don't recognize that it affects the children, and then they don't feel safe. Having a safe place in the house, which means you take your stuff away from the children, and whether you have to talk about it with, if you have a mate or partner or someone else, it is important to find that safe place to talk about real challenges.
Well, yeah, and I think that's interesting too, because I want to talk about divorced families and how sometimes a parent will put down the other parent in front, of the child constantly. And I don't think that that's a healthy thing to do, because then what's happening is you're just, you're reversing what maybe that child is feeling, and, growing up in a divorced family, it's like I was so afraid to have a relationship with my dad because I didn't want to hurt my mom's feelings because she felt the way she did.
That's so healthy.
And it's not healthy, and I see it all the time.
So I'm going to tell you what I say, because we teach family classes, and that's one of my favorite things.
Yeah, and I was going to say, what are some of the ways families and friends can best support a loved one?
So no, but I want to talk about it because reality of life, whether people were together or not together, but a child has two parents, right? And people don't understand whether one of the parents is to be kind, unhelpful, or has a lot of challenges themselves, or just angry. That child is part of two people. So what I tell the person who comes to our classes, and you can't control the other person, the father or mother of that child, is that you have a safe place at home, a place where you give a child that feeling of hope or just even safety. Never talk about the other, because children will learn by themselves who that other person is.
Exactly.
And what I say is that if two parents are living together, they need to not undermine the other when they decide how they're going to approach supporting somebody who has an illness, or just supporting a child in general through times. Mm-hmm. And so being really careful, because when you down another parent, that child is part of two parents, right? So you're really hurting part of that child too. And we think that we are going to be keeping that child closer to us temporarily. It doesn't work in the long run. And children will be really angry, and you're going to hurt your child who you love. Mm-hmm. And that's really, really important to know,
right?
That every parent is there and loves their child generally. How their love, it could be different, but they're tangled up with a lot of emotions.
Well, I think that parent education is really important today, too. And it's a continuous process, because as our world is changing, so are our young kids, it's like, so I think, and that's where we come in, too, with AWARE and utilizing.
I had to tell you something, but I said to my 92-year-old mother-in-law, I said to her, I realize that being a parent is the hardest job in the world.
Yes.
Especially adult children, right? Because we have to zip it. And children do things differently than we did, no matter who you are, especially as they become adult and they move away from the house and stuff, or in the 20s. And this is really important for people to understand, that in their 20s, their job of a child or an adult is to figure out who they are. They may throw everything out that you ever taught them, or just to figure out who they are. I'm not going to be like that. But I'm telling you, as the brain matures towards 30, frequently, if you don't fight that 20-year-old, I don't like raspberry ice cream, just as you do, we'll talk about that.
Right.
So I said, they will come back, but let them figure out who they are. Because if you did your job, they will see many of the values you had there.
Yeah, you set the foundation all through the beginning of their life, and hopefully it stays with them, right? Well, like today, I only eat vanilla ice cream because my mother told me I don't want you to get dirty. So you only like vanilla ice cream. So there are things like
to keep. Yeah, and there's things you can throw out. And being a parent, I'm going to tell you, the hardest job of a parent is to step back, age appropriately, and let that child do the job of growing up.
So what is the age appropriate?
It depends on the age and the child. Some people mature, like in other words, my daughter was, I don't know if it was 12 or 13. I'm a very bad historian. But when she wanted to walk into town, it was going across a big street, and she wanted to go with another young woman, a child. I said to her, look, and this doing with education, You never just throw someone out there.
Right.
Make sure you look both ways. You stay together. If each one wants to go into a little different store, you stay together and you take turns and go together in a different store.
Right.
But you never leave each other. Don't talk to strangers. If you have to ask a question of the store manager, that's okay.
Right.
But make sure you look both ways and make sure you stay together. So you don't ever, so age appropriate means that you don't just say, do it, but you try to give a little bit of, not pedantic, but education so that then you trust them to hear you.
Yeah, well, the trust is the key word. And that's so hard for parents today, especially with the world we live in, to trust not because of their kid, but because of everything else around them.
So, but what happens is, and I said this last night in the class as well, and I always say this, that when you overprotect, over control somebody growing up, what you do is the message is, I don't trust you. You can't do it. You need me. And that weakens a child.
Yes. And I see that a lot too today.
But you can't change that at any point. I don't care if the child's a young adult or not.
So you can change it.
Oh, and today is now the time, once you realize something, never look back, and you can't change that. But let's see what you need to do to slowly help that confidence in the child.
Right.
A child who you overprotect and overcontrol will love you, but will hate you.
Right.
They will love you because they need you. They hate you for keeping them weak in some level of their body.
Yeah.
So if people do, and I don't think people do it purposely.
No.
I think that parents sometimes have their own anxieties. But what we all want is children to be strong.
Right. But it's learned behavior. And that's where I go back to parent education.
Right.
If a parent isn't aware of what's going on with them, how can they possibly teach their child, a different way? So they have to learn more about themselves, and what's, that anxiety is huge.
Well, we offer education. And I never say you have to or you should. I say, look, it's not working. You may want to think about it.
Right.
When you tell somebody they have to, they should, they'll never do it.
They'll never do it.
Offer things and let people think about it. Awareness is the first step to any change.
Right.
Period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
So I want to switch a little bit over to suicide ideation. And what are some warning signs that someone might be struggling with suicidal thoughts?
Right. And this is important. We also, by the way, have a new group starting in October, Surviving Suicide,
which is wonderful.
And we also have Family Surviving Suicide Loss. And we just did a panel last Tuesday on really the pain, but the tools. But one of the important things is some of the things that you may notice: giving away precious objects that you've always collected, calling people saying goodbye, giving I think the Suicide Foundation had once said about invitations. And it means like something in your gut, you're not going to have to worry about me anymore, or, I just want to say, I might not see you again, but I love you. And they may say I'm a burden. That's a huge problem. That I'm worthless. Those are really bad words. And those you got to watch out for somebody. Feel guilt about, distracting you. If they really verbally tell you those things, you've got to be understanding that this is a very dark place the person's in.
Right.
And so, but there may not be any symptoms, any clues.
Right.
But when somebody has been depressed and for no reason becomes happy or peaceful, what do you think? Wow, wonderful that they're feeling better.
Right.
Not that they found a way out and now I'm relieved. I'm going to end this pain. Suicide is not about being selfish. It's not about anything but it's trying to stop that pain.
Right.
And
you often hear, oh, what a coward, or it's,
please,
I hate when I hear that.
This is nothing about anybody else.
Right.
The pain is so enormous. And so what I say to people, what you need to do is say, when in your gut, even if you in some way suspect in any way, you ask that person directly in words that are direct but comfortable for you. Are you thinking of killing yourself? Are you thinking of doing the act of suicide?
Right. Which is what I wanted to ask you, because we don't want to use commit suicide anymore.
Commit is absolutely
right. So the proper way is to say,
are you thinking of and if
the
they
act of suicide.
And if they hesitate, you may want to call 911.
Right.
If they say, well, I've been thinking about it, you still should call 911 because they need to be kept in a safe place. Suicide is not the culmination of one thing that happens. Generally, it's many things that's happened over time, and the person feels, in a deep, dark hole, alone, really, and helpless. So hopeless, helpless, alone, and in a deep, dark hole that they can't get out. I don't, and feeling that way, feeling that hopeless is a really tough place to be. And usually medication can help that.
Right. So I have a really good friend for many, many, many years. And unfortunately, she has a history of, the act of trying, and I'm blessed that it hasn't happened. But recently she tried because she was going through something and she just could not handle it anymore and she didn't know what to do with it. But, these are things that have been happened to her from years ago. She lost her sister, her father, her brother, and then she has a challenging elderly parent that she doesn't know how to handle. And maybe her husband cheated on her and, and she's in recovery. And I mean, the trauma that this poor woman has been through, that she always is trying,
To go through it,
go through it
beyond it.
Yes. So somebody like that, I mean, she's in and out of the hospital. We give her programs and suggest programs that are available to her. What does somebody who's in that type of pain do?
It's the connection of and it's usually a particular person or two, that connection and that feeling worthwhile. What can be really helpful is helping others. And that is a key for many, many recovery, is really sharing what you've been through and helping others with connection. I do want to say one last thing about that. So when you ask somebody, are you thinking of killing yourself or doing the act of suicide? You cannot put that in somebody's mind or think, oh, that's a good idea. That will never happen.
Right.
It's either there or it's not.
Oh,
So never be worried about, oh my God, am I going to give them the idea? No, you can't do that. It doesn't happen.
And I know also from my counseling experience that if they say yes, you call 911.
Right. Or even if they hesitate,
Right.
call 911. Because this is a very tough place to be. What happens is there's in cases when we have the families of surviving suicide loss, and we have people from out of the country coming to this virtual support group, because you learn a lot about what the families need as well afterwards. And people say, well, aren't you over it? 7 years, 10 years, whatever it may be, if it's a year, you never get over it. It's a pain that is really palpable.
And I know a family whose child at the age of 16 tried to take pills and
common.
And and the parent till this day, and now the child's in her 60s, okay, is worried about. So she never got over the fact, and every time she sees her, she'll look at her, is she okay? Am I going to say something? This has been going on now 40-some years.
I'm going to tell you what I say to parents, no matter, because the mother or parent is hypervigilant and hypersensitive. One of the things that can help anybody to open that door of communication is, look, if you're feeling something, please let me know. I'm here. You tell me what I need to do. We don't have answers.
Right.
And I say that to families all the time. Don't assume you know what an act or a non-act, behavior or non-behavior means. Ask.
Right.
Say, look, and that happened with me and somebody in the family. And I said, look, please let me know. Give me another chance. I'm sorry that happened in the past. But give me another chance and let me know what you need.
Right.
And
like I say, how can I help you? Or, if you need me, I'm here. Or just let them know.
You tell me what you need. That is empowering.
Right.
Not that tell me I can help. What do you need? Tell me, because I don't understand.
Because we can't tell people what they need.
Yeah.
We can't tell people what to do, but we can totally be there for them and support them.
Oh, no, absolutely. By seeing them. How many times do we not see people? Of any people? People, are different cultures or different everything. But that's just interesting. But they're a human being with human feelings. And when I go into many different areas, different communities, many of the different cultures, they all say, but here we don't, open up to it. And it's so funny because I hear they're all saying the same thing, but they don't understand that many groups say the exact same thing.
Right.
And that you're not alone, but and that it's amazing. And as human beings, let's see each other without stigma, without criticism. I always say criticism and judgment should be gone from this world.
Yes.
It's not helpful. I mean, do you have friends who are critical? No, you have friends who make you feel good or positive.
Which brings me, you just mentioned stigma. So what role does stigma play in suicide and mental health? And how can communities help break that down, in their everyday life?
So what we do, which is hopefully helpful, we have many different programs. One of it is we go into underserved communities or different cultures, and we train people within that community to talk about mental health. So who do you hear better? But people in your own community, right?
Right.
And so they go back and they do a 3-session, presentation to 3 different nights, whatever. It's usually every week or every couple months, whatever it is, what's good for them. We help support them with a little bit of a light bite and some materials, and they have in a safe place. A safe place is the main thing, is to talk. And any of our groups, it's confidential and safe.
Nice.
The other thing we do is who do you turn to when you are of faith?
Your pastor, your
faith leader.
Right.
And so we have, since 2014, a faith net, which we've been supporting faith groups and faith leaders to talk about and open up good mental health. Because when you turn to your faith leader and they're a little uncomfortable or don't have the right knowledge or resources, it is actually very frustrating and difficult. So our purpose is and I go into many faith places in October a lot, and talk about what is mental health. And we try to open up the conversation. And we've had people who are leaders, little quiet people who are leaders in their church, to bring people into some of our groups, and they bring it back to their.
So I love that you do this, because spirituality was a big part of my recovery and is a big part of my recovery. It continues to be. Is this something where you train the trainers? So in other words, do you have a faith leader that you train that can go back and work with their?
I know we have very big and national also about faith, not because we've been doing it for so long, but really important is that we have a retreat in May for faith leaders alone, because faith leaders are what? Human beings first before they put on the cloak. They are human and they have challenges like us.
Of course.
So it's a very confidential, safe place and we have a faith leader speak about their challenges, sometimes co-occurring with alcohol or with something else. And we had somebody talk about their bipolar. So every year we have someone different, and it opens up, well, they can. I'm human too.
Right.
And we assure them this is sacred. This is a safe place. You don't have to say anything, or you can. And we sometimes use breakout rooms, sometimes tables. We do different things.
Right.
And it's really important for them, the connection, to say, to share sometimes some of their challenges. They don't feel alone.
Right.
Because faith leaders feel uncomfortable, depending on what it is, to share.
Oh, of course, especially if they haven't been through it. And as we talked about lived experience and how important that can be. What is the criteria that you define as a faith leader? Is it pastors? Is it sisters?
So what we do is, particularly, faith leaders are anybody almost who is a leader of a faith group. But for the retreat, it has to be no lay leaders. It has to, because it has to have that confidential ability to feel, a sacred place to be open.
Yes.
For that. But we have panels, and we have subtopics of the panels each year. Also, we do two other presentations or panels. So we get 4 or 5 different faith leaders, different interfaith, and we ask them questions. And we give the questions 2 weeks prior to that panel for them. Never I gotcha. And it's interesting what you think someone would know or have a view of. We've had occasionally we have a faith leader who ran a family counseling center and didn't believe in medication, only believed in prayer. It was fascinating. So I never assume with anyone what they feel, what they believe, including, I say to anybody in any of my groups, don't assume when you look at anybody you know anything about them.
Right.
You know nothing about them.
So we as an organization have done interfaith panels where we have different people come, different faith leaders come in. And the main issue that we wanted to talk to them about is what tools do they have and what are they doing in their own parishes or communities to deal with the drug and alcohol issues. So, but yours is great too, because it adds that mental health piece. So I'm happy to hear that you do that. And you can do that. Like if I wanted to set up a group, you could come in and you can talk to them about mental health and, what's happening with families in their communities.
So a long time ago, NAMI, which I'm not sure if they still have, but I kept it, so we still use it. It's called Crawl, Walk, Run. And it gives suggestions from the very basis of having something easy to do, even just a story during Mental Health Month about something, or a health fair, or doing something a little more industrious. So those are the levels. And it gives suggestions.
Which is great, because that was my next question. So, Ellen, what resources or program does NAMI have for individuals and families seeking help? And I know that you have so many of them, but if you can just give us a sample of some of the ones that people can connect with, I think that would be great for them.
Absolutely. So even though we have general education classes for families and peers being people who are struggling, we have tremendous number of support groups and programs that are specialty. But we have neurodiversity. We have a teen group, brand new. We have the couples group, a sibling group. We have a peer group where we talk about a topic of everyday life each time. It's the only group we do weekly, but people really love it. They are not actually counseling or therapy, but they are therapeutic. It is about connection, is not feeling alone, and also seeing that you're not the only one who feels certain ways. We also have programs, professionals, provider education. We go into different schools and places. We have a brand new education for elementary school. We're just beginning to get into schools. We have Ending the Silence, which goes into high schools. We have a lot of people getting trained in that. And it's very structured training, so it's really not loosey-goosey. But it really is having people also share their experience as well as part of that presentations.
That's great. And if someone's listening today or struggling or knows someone who is, what is the first step that they should take?
Actually reach out. I get a lot of calls every day. I take helpline and crisis calls every day, as well as sending info at NAMICSLINY.org. I get those, and I try to get back to them in hopefully would be within a day, but it's certainly within a week. And so we really try to help people to learn about education and how to support, not how to control or fix, but how to support someone struggling. And it's really can be difficult. And many families say, well, that's hard work. I said, well, if you're not willing to do the hard work, how do you expect your person to do the work? So families, understanding this is difficult and changed takes time. And putting one foot in front of the other is wonderful. No matter where you get to, at least you're trying.
Well, I am so happy my friend Ellen decided to come in and speak with us. She is just a plethora of information. And I just want to share that if you need, you can go to their website, and their website is www.namicsliny.org, or you can email Ellen at info@namicsli.org. Do you want to mention also, we'll talk about the t-shirt? That's great.
So we have a walk October 5th in Sunken Meadow Park. We're going to have a ton of tabling resources, which is a good place to get resources for therapy, for residential, for so many other different things, for insurance, tons of stuff. But we also have, which I didn't mention, our Young Leadership Council. Wow. It is a wonderful place that we have people from 16 to 28 come on, and they created this t-shirt because they're going to have a youth event at the walk. And it says, rise to the challenge, be your own superhero. How do you like that? And this is our motto, step up for mental health. And we're NAMI, Central Suffolk, Long Island. But we do cover so many places. And since we're virtual, actually, we have people from all over the country and sometimes outside the country that come to our groups. One last thing, if you want to email me, we have our warning signs, which is really helpful for you to recognize.
And we could put that up on our website as well.
Okay. And I love this. This is an easy coping. And I like things to be understandable and easy, because if they're complicated, you're not going to do it. But I love that. And like, in other words, if you're restless and you can't focus, get up and take a break for 10 minutes and then come back and refocus. And these are the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and halt. So thank you.
That's wonderful. I'm so happy again to have her here. The walk, anybody can come on the walk?
Yes, I'm going to tell you we're going to ask everybody to register. Please register in advance. It just makes you coming in sooner, and you get goodie bag at NAMI Walk. So it's NAMIWALK.org/CSLINY. Register, not, you can donate at the registration, but register if you're coming, because that means you're coming. And pick a team. You can pick Team Ritz if you want. That's my team. But make your own team. You don't have to register with any team. Come.
I just want to also mention that on October 18th, Aware will be having their Color Dash Festival at Northport Middle School, starting at 8 o'clock for registration. And again, you can go on to Run Sign Up to register there. So we'll have a lot of great things. So, and I just want Ellen to read one more thing.
Thank you. This is actually written by my daughter. So many people don't want to tolerate their difficult feelings. They think that sad, upsetting feelings, including anxiety, are not healthy, and they cannot stand the way it makes them feel. Feeling sad and experiencing psychologically painful, difficult situations is part of everyone's life. How to cope with these feelings by using healthy and not unhealthy tools makes a difference in one's life. And this is particularly what she wrote. And remember, there is no one right way to feel right now. However you are feeling, however you are coping, you are surviving. And that is enough for right now. Be gentle with yourself.
That's really beautiful. And I think the most important thing that we could say today is you're not alone. We're here for you. There's a lot of resources for you. So please reach out. Ellen, I'm so happy that you were able to come today. I really, really value the work that you do and who you are as a person. And it just means so much to all of us. So thank you.
And thank you for having me. The work you do is extraordinary and helps so many. And thank you for doing all of this.
Thanks. The other thing I want to share with you is if there's a topic that you would like for us to cover, please, you can email me at info@awareli.org, and we'll be more than happy to do that for you. So thank you and have a wonderful day.